So we're recording this. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to one in a series of webinars we put together for our clients and prospective clients. And this one is very much focused on immutable backup, the most important defense against ransomware, we think. But please check out our website, www.bluesource.co.uk, where you can see such webinars as our modern workplace, our Windows Virtual Desktop, and next week we've a webinar on the integration of Mimecast and Netscope. And Netscope, for those that don't know, are very much a security player around the CASB and a secure web gateway. So without further ado, Nick, welcome, as I make sure I press the right buttons. You can see that. So everybody, welcome today. Thank you for spending 20 minutes with us today. But with me today is Nick Barron. Nick is the CTO of Harber. Harber's a sister company of BlueSource. Nick, without further ado, let me give you that floor to just introduce yourself. Is there anything you want to highlight of your background?
Lots of things I don't want to highlight, I guess, but no. So, so yes, my name's Nick Barron. I've been at Harber a few years now, and actually been in and around Harber for and indeed BlueSource for probably the better part of a decade, and have spent probably getting on for 3 decades now in and around the industry. Started in telecoms, actually, just at the sort of height of the bubble, I guess, sort of late 90s and in there, and then actually moved more into the sort of public cloud, high scalability sort of piece, really sort of 2009, and have kind of stayed through that into the managed service sort of play for since then, really.
Brilliant. So it's very much solving those customer challenges around recovery. So Nick, it's great to have you on board. Thank you for today. My name's John Ford. I'm Sales Director here at BlueSource. And my role really is to make sure we take advantage of Nick's time on this call. My background is very much probably 3 years at Microsoft, so very much on that modern workplace, but also 3 years at Symantec as it's split, so that's security stroke data management. So maybe I'll add some small bit of value on this call as well. So everybody, welcome. There's going to be a session during the day. Please, if you've got some queries or some questions you want answered, please look at the Q&A button, hit that. We'll endeavour trying to get those out if they're nice and sensible. So I'll use that part. But also, just to set the scene, some of you on the call will know BlueSource, some won't. I'm not going to go into all 4 parts of our business around data and migration or modern workplace or our managed services in too much detail. I'm going to focus, obviously, ransomware and the immutable copy of that, of being able to sort out that, very much sits in our data protection story. So very much for us, there's about 5 areas that we focus on. So it's that risk and identity. That's making sure we understand the risk, we understand profiling, and we're looking at data governance solutions. We understand that Microsoft whole center as well, and look at mapping your business requirements onto your IT functionality. So we also look at, if I hit the right button, that protect and prevent, and very much again around making sure ensuring safeguards to ensure your continued delivery of infrastructure and data and cloud services. So it's very much making sure, again, using a lot of the Microsoft stack, shall we call it, but it's also system hardening. We're going to cover immutability, identity, data encryption. When we start talking about endpoint, all of the Microsoft Advanced Security, Azure Security, looking at DLP, CASB, Secure Web Gateway, and right through to access controls when you're using Teams, for instance. Detect then is very much, okay, how do we make sure we've got proactive reporting on our IT infrastructure? How do we make sure we've got a baseline? How do we start looking at file level insights into the data? How do we find that data within our organization so we're able to give the right level of security and protection around it? And then how do we do some e-discovery? Responding is very much, okay, how do we contain a breach? How do we stop the spread? So again, we look at various SaaS type backup solutions. We're going to talk about backup today. We're going to talk about recovery once you're in that situation as well. And of course, the recover part of it as well is how do you build a resilience? How do you automate that? How do you orchestrate that? How do you start looking at DR, using that as part of it as well? And I know, Nick, we're going to cover off some parts of that today as well. And of course, underpinning all of that is delivering outcomes and managed services or monitoring type services, and connecting data protection to security to compliance as well, because as we're all seeing now as well, talent and the ability to keep and retain talent is proving really difficult for a lot of our clients as well. So hopefully we can help support you there. So high level view of the BlueSource story. You've all seen these slides. I'm not going to spend too much on this, but it's a growing threat. It's come from boys and girls in their bedrooms, having play around and breaking into the FBI's most wanted list, to more cyber gangs, to more state. And we've seen the Microsoft announcement the other day was around state. The state-sponsored cyber criminals now. That's what they're doing. So they will be targeting now utilities within countries. They will be looking at weak spots. They will look at London and the City of London and all the business units there between legal, financial, HR, insurance, reinsurance, and all those financial markets, and looking to target those now. It's 91%, that stat there begins with spear phishing. Email is still, all the stuff we've used for 20 years now is still the most commonly used ways. And again, join us next Friday the 26th, where we're talking about email and how to support and get through that with our Mimecast/Netscope solution as well. So you've seen the numbers. Again, it's now every major operating system and platform. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. The big question, the whole point you're on this call today is, how do we not get to this point? Because we work with a large Italian drinks manufacturer, and they was in the press recently, and they had to ask this question internally. So hopefully today will give you some risk mitigation of the likely need to ever get to this point. But yeah, we can help you on that journey. So I'm going to, at this stage, I'm going to stop sharing. You'll be all glad. So we're certainly not going to we're certainly not going through death by PowerPoint. So Nick, again, welcome again. Is there, I suppose, where I'd start with, where's the common ransomware fears? How are bad actors now targeting backup? Surely they're targeting different solutions and applications and people. Why suddenly the backup? Is that true? They're even looking at the backup?
I think it's certainly a line that is talked about a lot, and I think your kind of, I guess, slide previous sort of points towards it, and obviously it's only ever good being able to extract money out of people if you actually have something on them, and if they're able to recover very easily, then you're unlikely to pay them. So I think there is a desire amongst those that would do such a thing to try and obviously cause you as much damage as possible, so that they can either extract as much money or at least guarantee that you'll hand it over. And I think what we've seen is clearly backups over the last couple of years have gone from being something that the people kind of felt they had to do. I remember my first job back in the 90s was taking out a tape from the Novell NetWare server, as it was then, neatly putting it on top of the tape drive and putting another tape in. And I don't think anyone ever expected or wanted to recover anything from those tapes. It was just certainly in my case, something the new boy was sent to do. So I think backup's gone from a formality into something, okay, we do need to use this not just for ransomware, but for GDPR, for really anything that you need to be able to restore your data from. And we're also seeing it expand into being used for dev and test, and being able to spin up identical sets of your environment. And you mentioned DR as well, and disaster recovery. So it's suddenly become actually a little bit more front and center in people's mind across a number of things. But clearly, from the topic of today's conversation, if you're going to be hit by ransomware, your production environment is going to be taken out. you want to be able to restore from your backup. And what we've seen is that, as with all of these things, they're an ingenious bunch. People that are attacking these things, and they're basically adding more dwell time in. So, and you've seen through some of the stuff in the news, they could have been in some of these environments for months. And that typically then extends past the point that any locally stored backups are kept, and people are pushed off the tape and various other things, and we can touch on those in a minute. So when they say targeting backups, it's not that they are specifically trying to find backup files in the system, but they are certainly building much more of a dwell time in to sort of maximize the impact of what they can do.
So when you say a dwell time, you mean that they get in, they break in, they stay dormant for a while, they propagate, and then they make themselves known. Is that what you mean by the dwell time? Sorry.
Absolutely, and depending on the type of backup technology you've got, those backup files, if they're sat on sort of standard x86 file servers and so forth, as a number of them are, or sat as effectively a file share, then they can be targeted on the backup data, whilst it can't necessarily be read, because typically most backup software is also encrypting its data down to disk. They can effectively encrypt those files and make them as useless as everything else in your environment.
And so you mentioned there, everyone in this call now will have a backup product. So, is some, what should people look out for? If we're talking about locally stored backups, and it's, the usability of that, and obviously RPOs and RTOs, we're not going to go into the detail there, but, is that, what's the differences, nowadays when you've got this type of threat vector on there? What is it that makes the differences, and what's the kind of questions customers should be asking now?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things. There's some that are vendor or technology specific, and some that are a bit more generic. And if you look at the generic ones, first of all, I think we are seeing probably over the last couple of years, a move away from sort of DIY approaches to stuff, and much more into an appliance-based backup for local, for traditional data centers, and actually a similar appliance model into the public cloud options as well that are out there. And that's kind of for the reasons I just said there. If you're using a standard Windows server and you're presenting some disk to it, and you are presenting the file in, you have you're opening an attack vector in much the same way as your file server or anything else in your environment could potentially be compromised. And various vendors make it harder to do, but you're still at risk. So what we're definitely seeing, and the trend is over the last couple of years, much more move towards sort of bespoke appliance based. They're typically Linux, so again, they're hardened, they're stripped down, they're sort of built for a purpose, and they're appliance, so they're not necessarily presenting storage in the same way as a standard file share, etc., which again makes it a lot more complicated, a lot harder, or less likely for those attacks to be able to encrypt that backup data. And some of the vendors out there are also then using sort of immutable backup, so combining all of that lot together, and then using immutable or worm if you're been in the industry a long time. All of these sort of techniques now coming back to the fore. So even if the machine, even if that device or storage is compromised, you still can't do anything with it.
And so just the word immutable then, what to people that maybe have started to hear this word, like the word air gap. And I always thought, well, an air gap between, say, production and your backup was always good, and maybe tape technology was the way you did that. You had that break and you put it in on tape, as you say, and you took it off to somewhere else, took it home with you or whatever. But so can you help give a view of what an air gap kind of, and why tape isn't the answer there, or maybe it is, and what you mean by immutable?
Cool. So yeah, absolutely. So I guess immutable in its simplest terms is can't be changed. So what we see is certain technology. So Rubrik, one of the vendors we work with, they make a lot of noise about their immutability on their own appliances, and they are effectively worm drives. So once you write that data onto that appliance, until such is aged out or a specific set of criteria has happened, I can't go in and just change that data. So I stop if something did manage to get in and try and encrypt it, it wouldn't be able to because it can't be changed. So we have that at a sort of at a basic level, and then you're absolutely right. We then have you've always sort of had the concept of taking a tape home with you. That was the advancement on from my first job when I earned my stripes. I was allowed to put the tapes in the boot of my car, and you know, that kind of approach is still largely what a number of people rely on. It's a bit more secure than the boot of someone's car, and you have Iron Mountain and these storage facilities that will take your tape and look after them. But that presents a number of challenges, because it's all very well having your data safe, but if you do have an attack or you do need to use it, it might not be for a ransomware attack. It might just be because you've had, I don't know, a storage array outage or varying other things that mean you have to go back to that backup. It's all well having the data, but you've got to be able to access it quickly, because it's not going to be very useful if it's going to take you 3 months to restore your production environment because you've got 9,000 tapes been dumped on you by the storage company, and you've got to feed them into your tape libraries and get that data back. So it's about balancing, obviously, the need to store your data, the need to keep your data long term, the need to put this gap between your environment and what your people can do, and obviously being able to speed for recovery. And then if I'm also looking at tapes, are not a brilliant mechanism for storage. You know, they don't age well. So you tend to have to do quite a lot of work to your tape if you really want to keep that data. And if you're going through the time and trouble and expense of storing it, you probably do want to be able to use it when you need to. Then you're probably going to have to start calling your tapes back, cycling it onto different tapes, running all these other processes to make sure that that data is usable. So we kind of see a number of things starting to occur in this space. So the need for an air gap. So if my production systems have been compromised, either by ransomware or indeed, as we also see quite a lot, unfortunately, these days, is sort of bad actors in the organization. So I don't know, maybe I've just let someone go and they disagree with my decision. I clearly don't want them in their sort of leaving breath to be able to start wiping out chunks of my estate. So that sort of bad actor piece as well comes into play here. So how do I create a gap between my production systems and the data I've got stored? So if something happens here, it doesn't automatically flow through and start getting deleted or encrypted or whatever it is here. Tape is one way of doing that, clearly. If the tape is out of the physical tape library, well, no one can write to it. And what we've actually seen really is Amazon, first of all, and Microsoft Azure now, and a lot of these online object-based storage repositories now support S3 object lock if it's an Amazon one, or an equivalent in Azure in blob storage. And that enables you to effectively set some criteria on what can happen to that data. So when can that data be written, changed, or deleted? And it could be anything from, you know, keep it for a day, a week, a month, a year, keep it forever, never change it. And that enables you to get a tape-like sort of object lock, turn that drive into a worm. So read once or write once, read many times approach. But it also means that data can be restored very quickly. Because it's all coming down online storage, I'm not having to worry about loading tapes in. I can move up to more performance storage. If I have pushed it down to one of the very cheap archive type locations, I can potentially pay to have that restoration done quicker as well. So I've got the ability to move that data back. And I also get a high durability. And this is, you've probably all looked on those cloud providers' websites and seen when they talk about storage, they list about 11 nines or whatever it is after the piece around durability. And think of durability as how likely is my data to be lost. And obviously the more nines, the less likely that data is to come back in some form of unreadable format. And that high durability piece is just something that you can't match with tape. I mean, you can't even really match it with a traditional RAID type storage array, because RAID prioritizes availability over durability, right? That's why you have multiple controllers, the way you build your disk sets are all designed to provide you availability, whereas what I actually want for my sort of long-term storage is durability. I want to make sure that if I come back to this data in 10 years, I can do something with it.
And so I'm conscious of time. So, you know, we've named this last line of defense, and people will spend a lot of money on the last line of defense. But, you know, have you, you know, again, you've got that data copy, what other insight, what other value can customers get from that data then? So you made all this investment and it sits there and hopefully it's never used. But of course, the data needs to kind of work. But is there anything else they can get from that? Is there any other kind of value that you're seeing customers get out of kind of backup, and maybe it's different backup solutions, but are you seeing anything on that side?
Yeah, quite a lot, and actually it comes in a couple of different flavors or areas of it. So, the first and most obvious one is I have a complete copy of all of your data. So I can use that to do a number of different things, whether that is provide you dev and test environments. And we see, maybe it's the sort of, I guess, the traditional public cloud use case. I've got my production data centers running maybe in my own facilities. I'm backing all that data up, and I'm basically able to send copies or part of that data to public cloud to enable you to spin up multiple copies of database servers or whatever it is to run dev and test against. So we're seeing that, and that degree of sophistication becoming a lot more. And it's one of probably the uses of our managed service offering that our clients like the most, is we can help them in that process, because it's not necessarily straightforward, but it is certainly a high value piece. So why keep all your data in a cupboard? Wouldn't it be great if you could actually start using it? Absolutely. So DR and dev and test clearly spin out very easily from that.
And I've talked about integration at the earlier. We're seeing a lot of integration with others, like with backup and into the processes needed there. We're seeing security, with the infrastructure operations and security speaking, they're bringing compliance into it. Are you seeing those types of integrations as well in your world? Are you going to meetings with usually the infrastructure and operations team, IT, or is security in there? Is compliance in there? Are you seeing that at the moment?
Yes, is the really short answer to all that. We're seeing we're seeing that the security team now pretty much without fail being much more interested in what we're doing. One, because of this immutability, last line of defense, that whole piece, clearly, but also not only am I taking a copy of your data or all of our customers' data, I'm also touching that data regularly, and that could be, well, it could be every 15 minutes for some high transactional sort of database log type backups, or certainly every day. So I'm able to see and spot trends that are happening in that data because I'm touching it very frequently, and I'm able to see what's happening. So I can start to provide sort of early warning of things that are untoward happening in the environment. And it's certainly not replacing any of that sort of front-facing security posture, but it's adding to it. So if I'm backing up all of your environment every night, I can see most customers have on average a couple of % daily change across their files, right? If I suddenly start seeing, and if I'm a victim of an encryption attack or a ransomware attack, clearly all of that data is going to change. So my daily change is going to go from 2% to 10% to 20%, whatever it is. Likewise, if a malicious actor inside of the organization is moving or copying or deleting a lot of data, I'm able to sort of see that high change rate. And some of the technology, we've got Radar from Rubrik, for instance, uses AI and ML running in the public cloud to sort of analyze that data, look at what's happening to it, and compare it against both trends in your organization and sort of more global trends, and then start to alert on stuff that is happening. So again, bolts onto your sort of front end security posture, and kind of also just sees what's happening at the back end, not what happens coming in. So that's the sort of security lens. More recently, we're seeing more focus around governance. So you again mentioned governance and that sort of whole piece. That's particularly important in certain sectors more than others at the minute. But again, because some of the technology we use brings that data in and attaches metadata to it. Not only does it mean it's simple to do search and restore, but it also means we can start seeing what that data is, and we can start finding data that is misplaced. So if you've got classified information stored in an unencrypted bucket, well, we can kind of start seeing some of that information, start seeing where it's stored, and again, start alerting and helping you shape policies to make sure your data is in the right place and categorized and kept in the right way. And that can even come down to simple things like, again, as part of surprised how many people don't really put a lot of thought into their retention policies. So pretty standard. Everyone goes, well, we'll just do either what used to be, we'll keep forever. And then with GDPR, people rein that down a bit and kind of say, well, we'll keep for 7 years or maybe 1 year for less critical systems, but we'll do 30 days, 12 monthlies, etc. Well, maybe that isn't right at all. Still, I mean, every time you back up, it's going to cost you money to store that data somewhere. So don't back up what you don't need. Then you've got the governance and the controls piece on it. I don't want data I don't really want to hold on to. I don't want to hold on to it. So as part of our managed service, we spend a lot of time working with partners, customers to really put together the right policies and not oversimplify, not overcomplicate it either, but put the right policy on. And again, that metadata and that ability to search and tag and apply policies granularly these days is really helpful in supporting that.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing that connection between the governance side and the compliance and bringing those down. So you've got that, you know, what's our data doing, who's got access to it, and delete it, erase it as well. So cool. We don't have that many questions, so I'm going to share screen. Hopefully, we spoke and we were trying to understand. Let me just make sure I hit the right buttons again. Oh, he says, oh, not that way. So we've got two next steps. So I think a few of our customers already use some of these, like a backup workshop. You know, review your data management processes, understand baseline, what's your roadmap, and we go through all of those. And a deeper version of that is the assessment, Nick, as well. So I know, you know, a lot of customers have got lots of value out of just doing that. But also I know because we've been involved, you've been involved on the ransomware side, and you know that's particularly where the business gets focused, if you like. So even though it's connected to backup security, recoverability, you know, some businesses are asking, well, where are we with that? So, you know, I think between us, we look at that high level, you know, the process. What is your process? Have you got, you know, you've just mentioned data visibility. You know, what's your planning? What's your journey to cloud? And what cloud apps have you got? Do you understand your shadow IT and make recommendations from that as well? So we've got some next steps there. We didn't have that many questions, Nick. So that could be a good thing or bad thing.
I was going to say.
But I think, you know, what you've shown is it's always good to have these types of conversations. And again, with our customers and prospects on the call, hopefully they've got some value of it as well. I'll just check. I'll give anyone a final 30 seconds if there's any Q&As. No, there's no Q&As. So Nick, at this stage, any final thoughts from you? I know you've covered a lot there, lots of different areas, from cloud to immutability. Hopefully people now up to speed on that, and air gaps and backup and tape and differences on backup solutions out there. But anything finally that you think might be of final interest? No,
not really. Other than just to touch on what you mentioned there is there are always improvements you can make on any technology. So this isn't necessarily about swapping one vendor for another vendor. You know, there are a number of things we can do either at the consultant or managed service level that can improve your current posture with your current technology. It's not saying you won't get benefits from swapping that out, but you know, depending on where you are and the complexity, there's things we can help at all points.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, with budgets being the way they are, yeah, we can certainly help. Just make sure you get the most, maximize the current investments as well. So yeah, good shout as well, Nick. So Nick, thank you. And thank you to all of our customers and prospects that dropped on this call. Hopefully you found it of use. And as I said, please look at our website, details below, for further details and further upcoming webinars as well. As I said, one on the 26th, that is certainly on more on the security side, making sure we're kind of protecting you as you move that journey towards a secure access service edge, as people like to say, SASE. So hopefully see some of you on that. And Nick, have a great day. Everyone on the call, have a good day, and we'll speak soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Thanks.
Cheers.